Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yamuna Tihira Vanacho Hari. Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yamuna Tihira Vanacho Hari. Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhavan, Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavayapa, Giridvaradhari. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Nanjana. Yamuna Tihira Vanacha Hari. E ora, Kalani? Kia ora, sir? Ah. Let's chant Om. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om. Good afternoon. International Yoga Day. So when I think of Yoga Day, one of the things that strikes me is so many yoga institutions in India really as their motto. They just use the motto Yoga Samadhi. So yoga is samadhi. So all of the other tools and techniques, they all have their place. They're all important, but there really is no yoga. There's no yoga day without samadhi. And so we are going to be practicing the 7 stages of samadhi today. And let me just mention a little bit about our course. This is the last day of our course. So week 4, and we're just learning how to do lives. I think we finally got an idea of more or less how to do these, how the PowerPoint should be, how the technical part should be. Kalani, our technical assistant, is finally learning how to let me handle the slides, which is helpful. Someone's got to do it. And also, I think that we found out that we wanted to do an overview right from the start, but for chapter 1, 4 weeks was more like a very brief overview. And so in a couple of months' time, we'll do chapter 2, but we'll take a few more weeks so we can go through them more thoroughly. And so what we find is that what we actually need to go through the Yoga Sutras would be 1 class per sutra. So 196 weeks. And maybe you wouldn't need 1 class per sutra, but you would probably need at least a year. You'd need at least a minimum of 52 weeks to even start to do them justice. So, but this is the first time and we're learning as we go. And so when we do chapter 2, we'll add a couple of more weeks so we can at least cover the basics. So anyway, it's a learning experience for all of us. And these sutras, I just get so involved in them. And I think of one of my teachers, Dr. Ananda, and he says, I love Patanjali. I love Patanjali. I love these sutras. And so when we start to get into them, they really become really a life's work. And so with that said, International Yoga Day, let's go on to our sutras. Kalani, you got to let me control these sutras. Yes. Okay. I'm in control here, Kalani. I'm in control of these sutras. Yogena chittasya, padena vacham, malam sharirasya, Javaidhyakena, Yopa karotam, Pravaram muninam, Patanjalim, Pranjaliranatosmi. With hands folded, I bow respectfully to Patanjali, the best of sages, who dispelled the impurities of the mind with yoga, of speech through grammar, and of the body by means of Ayurvedic medicine. And gratitude to our teachers. And so last week we were talking about Om and surrender to the Lord, surrender to Ishvara, and how important they are, and important not only in this context, but we find them throughout we found Ishvara Pranidhana in several places in the Yoga Sutras. And one place that it's really important is that when we get to the yamas and niyamas, what we're going to find is that of all of the yamas and niyamas, it's only surrender to the Lord. It's only Ishvara Pranidhana that gives us the power, gives us the siddhi of samadhi. And as we said, yoga is samadhi. So this Ishvara Pranidhana, each of the niyamas has a siddhi, a power that it bestows. And so, but only surrender to the Lord gives us the power to experience samadhi. So we're looking at now the essence of Om. And so we see that through that repetition of Om, consciousness of the inner self is realized, pratyak chetana, and the impediments to the practice of samadhi are removed. Those impediments are called the antarayaha, or antarayas, if we want to kind of anglicize it. So let's say the whole Sutra 1.29. Tata, pratyak, chetana, adigama, api, antaraya, abhavaha, cha, cha. Let's say it all together. Tata pratyak cheta nadigamo pi antaraya bhavascha. Tata pratyak chetanadigammo pi antaraya bhavascha. So through chanting Om, we have that consciousness of our inner self, and also the impediments to samadhi, the antarayas are removed. So let's look at these antarayas. So this is a list that we're pretty familiar with a lot of these things, and we find them in all different yoga traditions and practices. But let's just look at a couple of interesting points here. First is later on in the sutras, we're going to find out, well, what do we want to do with all of these? We want to bring in their opposite qualities through pratipaksha bhavana. And let's look at some of these opposite qualities. So the opposite of illness, svastya, vibrant health. And sthana, dullness, its opposite is enthusiasm. Obviously, we need to have vibrant health just to practice. We need to have enthusiasm for our practice. The opposite of samshaya, doubt, jnana nishchaya, certainty. So what is that certainty? That certainty is that only this yoga practice, and in fact, only our experience of our true being, through samadhi or through whatever means our tradition is using, that's the certainty, that will be our life's purpose and meaning. That's what we're here for. And then we've got pramada, carelessness, and its opposite, smrtihi. So carelessness is not like I spilled the milk. It's not remembering who you are and why you're acting and why you're interacting. So the opposite of carelessness is really consciousness. It's really moment-to-moment consciousness. And so that remembering is smrtihi. Alasya, lethargies, we want to have shakti, vital energy. And so that's not just physical energy, but it's also energy within all of the chakras. Avirati, sense indulgence. Where's its opposite? Its opposite could be anavirati, non-sense indulgence. We just made one up. So keeping in mind that within this model of yoga coming from Samkhya philosophy, the mind is one of the senses. So we have these physical senses, and then we also have the mind. The mind is one of the senses. The mind is really the only one of those senses that's going to cause you problems. So if the mind is clear, if the mind is following Sutra 1.2, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, if the mind is following 1.2, then the senses are not a problem. We're going to look at something beautiful and we're just going to say, hey, that's beautiful. But when we don't have that clarity of who we are and our life's purpose and meaning, then it's going to be, hey, those flowers are beautiful and I want them. I went to the store to buy them, but everyone's out now. Everyone has finally gone outdoors and all the flowers are gone. So that's the problem. It's not the senses. It's that mind that says, I know it was my neighbor. She was the last one. She bought those last flowers. And so it's this activity of the mind. And without them, the senses are just fine. So sense indulgence, it's really indulging in our minds, indulging in our thoughts, indulging in all our likes and dislikes. And they're the binding likes and dislikes. So we can have non-binding likes and dislikes. I went to the flower store. There weren't any flowers. My neighbor was there. She was right in front of me. She bought the flowers. She put them in her garden. And I just went in front of her house and admired her flowers. So there are all kinds of ways to deal with likes and dislikes. So likes and dislikes are fine as long as we don't get attached to them. I would have liked to have bought those flowers. It didn't work out. I'll buy them next week. I'll do something else. I'll concentrate on my yoga practice, and I'll just take that as one dislike I would like to work on and get rid of today. So everything that happens is just something that I'd like to work on. some way that I'd like to make myself a better person. So not the senses that are important, it's the way the mind interprets sensory material. This Bhranti Darshana, false views, the opposite of that is Vashitvam, self-mastery. What would be the most common false views? I think that all of us have our different spiritual teachers and different spiritual traditions and yoga practices, and they're all wonderful as tools. And I think that when we think of any of that as an end, I think that's the really essence of a false view. I'm such and such religion. We wear turbans, we wear crosses. Those other people that don't wear turbans, they're not like us. So whatever it is, all of those things as tools are fine, whatever they might be, whatever yoga practices people have. But all of those are thoughts. They're all beliefs. And all beliefs are in the realm of Prakriti. And our true self, Purusha, is completely beyond thought. So anytime we're attached to anything at the level of thought, no matter how exalted it might be, and of course, those blissful meditation experiences, we can get very attached to that. You know, we say, no, I saw the light of 100 suns. And the other people says, no, I saw the light of 10,000 suns. No, in our tradition, we have a light of 1,000,000 suns. And of course, the more suns, the more you're going to have to pay, right? It's obvious. But all of those things, and they're good. And so all of these things are good. They're all made of the 5 elements. No matter how many suns you have in your meditation, whether it's 10,000 or 1,000,000, the sun is part of Prakriti. And no matter how blissful your meditation, it's still a thought or a belief. And so what Patanjali is saying is that that realm of thought, that realm of belief, it's going to hold you back no matter how exalted your spiritual practice. And it's only when you've left the whole realm of thoughts behind that you've recognized your true being as Purusha. So anything that you're holding to within Prakriti, no matter how esteemed those values might be, at the level of thought, at the level of belief, if you want to stay there, hey, there's a cat that looks just like Goldie. That cat looks just like Goldie. Hi, kitty. Aw. And so that's where we go beyond all false views. We can only go beyond false views when we go beyond the mind. And the way to go beyond the mind is in Nirbija Samadhi, which we're all going to experience today, right? Everyone up for Nirbija Samadhi? Good, let's do it. So, and then we have Alabdha Bhumikatva. So this is these next two, Alabdha Bhumikatva and Anivasti Tatvani, these are the ups and downs in our practice. And so this is where we have to make, we have to have a commitment to our practice. And our practice can have low points, and also our practice can have moments so blissful, and we go into another realm so deeply that they can be frightening. And we don't know what that place is. It looks something like heaven. We're not sure. We use names to describe it. And so it's not only the negative points where, you know, I said something I didn't want to say to someone. I went into my practice. I was reflecting on that. So obviously all of those interruptions, all of those ways that we act in ways we wouldn't like to, they can keep us from maintaining that ground we'd like to. But also we can hit points in our practice where we just ask ourselves, well, what was that? Where is this going? What would it be like not to have a personality anymore? And that can be scary too. And so these last two are these ups and downs in our practice. Make sense? Okay. Now, then what we have that goes along with these antarayas, we have all these symptoms. And actually, the word that's used there in your text is anabhuvaha, which means a correlate. And so not only are these things caused by those impediments, but these things, since they're correlates, these things can also be seen as the cause of those impediments. And what we're really looking at here is a philosophy of mind-body health. And so we speak so much about mind-body health, but what we're looking at, if we look at these and then we go back and look at illness, we're really seeing Patanjali really laying out a whole philosophy of mind-body health. So dukkha, suffering, pain, it's physical or psycho-emotional suffering. And of course, psycho-emotional suffering, much more common even than physical suffering. Dharmanasya, literally meaning anguish or despair. But in our terminology today, I believe it would be correct to use depression. And then angame ajayatva, trembling of the limbs. So we've got our limbs there, the angas, and they're trembling. But also, from my perspective, I think that what he's really talking about is anxiety. And finally, we've got an imbalanced inhalation and exhalation. So what we're looking at here is a kind of very common depression, anxiety disorder. And so what we're saying is that, and stress, really the stress response. And so the stress response, a chronic stress response, leading to depression, leading to anxiety, and then that symptom of imbalanced breathing and psycho-emotional suffering. And then if we go back to our antarayas, if we go back to our impediments, we can see that he's not saying that one is causing the other. He's saying that they're correlates, that they really go together, that these antarayas are causing those others, and that they are also causing the antarayas. So in this case, we're seeing that stress, that chronic stress, it can cause illness, it can cause dullness, it can cause doubt, it can cause all of these things. And so he's laying out here really a whole philosophy of mind-body health. And so, of course, so important in yoga today, in yoga therapy, but we can see that it's very clearly laid out. So the next thing he's going to go into a whole series of different techniques. And so he already, and so we're talking about how to get into samadhi. So how do I get into samadhi? So we have faith, we have energy, we have remembering, we have constant practice. Maybe we did a lot of practice in a previous life and we're almost all ready to check out into samadhi in this life. So all of those things are good. And then he said, but really what really is powerful is this surrender to the Lord. Ishvara pranidhana. And then he says you can use Om, and Ishvara pranidhana and Om. They're going to help us overcome all of those impediments. Now he's going to give a whole series of different meditations. He gives a whole series of meditations. I think there's about 9 of them. We're just going to be going through a couple of them. And what time is it, Kalani? Kyoto-san? So we're just going to be going through a few of them, the ones that I really like personally. And so I think in the whole Yoga Sutras, one of the most important sutras is this 4 immeasurable qualities, 1.33. Let's say them individually. Maitri, Maitri, Karuna, Karuna, Mudita, Mudita, Upekshanam, Upekshanam, Sukha Dukkha, Sukha Dukkha, Punya Punya, Punya Punya, Vishayanam, Vishayanam bhavanataha bhavanataha chitta prasadanam chitta prasadanam. Let's see if we can do this all together. Maitri karuna mudito pekshanam sukha dukkha punya punya vishayanam bhavanatas chitta prasadanam. Bhavanatas. I think there's a cha missing there. I think there should be a cha after bhavanatas. I'll put in the cha this time. Maitri karuna mudito pekshanam sukha dukkha punya punya bhavanatascha chitta prasadanam. So the mind becomes clear and serene through the cultivation of loving kindness, compassion, intrinsic joy, and neutrality in relation to pleasure and pain, virtue and absence of virtue. So let's talk a little bit about these. Maitri, loving kindness. I think we're in a critical moment of Maitri because I don't know exactly how things are in the United States, but things here in Brazil, most people are pretty conscious here. Most people are pretty neighborly, maybe not at a government level, but sort of at an average day-to-day level. Brazilians are pretty darn nice people. But we're seeing how the stress of this whole COVID thing is wearing on people. And what is really important here is this loving kindness, this basic courtesy, this consideration, this caring for others, thinking of others before yourself. All of this is loving kindness. Even if it's being in line somewhere. And here we've got these markers, sort of markers in line, and our city and state, fortunately, have a very little problem, but other places in Brazil have very big problems. And it's just little things like someone is in line and you can see they're kind of anxious, and you just say, you know, maybe this person needs this more than I do. Let this person go in front. What does it cost? And what does a smile cost? So this is Maitri. This is this loving kindness. It's when everyone else is frowning because they have to wait in a big line to get in the bank. And instead you smile. And you offer that smile to everyone there. And this smile, this loving kindness, is especially important when you want to frown. So that's when you feel like smiling, loving kindness is great. But it's when you feel like frowning that the loving kindness is really important. And we're in a point in the United States, you know, I'm a little distant from it, but it seems like there's a certain group of people, and it's a very small minority, who are just saying, no, I just want for me. I don't want to practice loving kindness. And we're hoping that their leader will not be reelected, that Donald Trump will not be around. And he's sort of the head of the ones who don't want to practice Maitri. And so let's hope for an end to that. And so, and then karuna, compassion. So karuna, it's especially when you're dealing with people who are difficult, but basically in any situation. And instead of first asking yourself, how do I see them? How are they? Why don't they act like this? Why are they acting like this? Instead, I ask, what is that person feeling? Where are they coming from? What might have happened to them? And so we see that everyone is actually searching for happiness and avoiding suffering with the tools that they have. And the only difference is the tools. And so yoga should be giving us all of these wonderful tools, but we find quite a lot of judgment even within yoga, don't we? You know, that tradition's not the way we practice. That kind of yoga we don't do. Or those kind of postures are going to hurt you. And sometimes it's true. But but there's a way to look at these and look at the people and saying, why did they do that? Some people, based on their history, with the tools they have, perhaps just jumping around for 2 hours and sweating and calling it yoga, that might be the only thing, that might be what works for them at this time. And it might be the only thing that works for them. And so it's always seeing, where is this person coming from? And then not judging them and recognizing that all of us have limitations. And someone might be judging us as well. And so karuna, that compassion, is just saying, where is this person coming from? In what way are they suffering? How could I possibly help? And the next one is mudita, intrinsic joy. So intrinsic joy is really that light that we experience in ourselves from our own meditation practice. So at first, that light comes into our day-to-day living gradually, and sometimes we react against it, and sometimes we always want to feel like we want to join that group that want to frown instead of smiling. But gradually, with our meditation practice, that light starts to fill our being, and then we can radiate that light no matter what's happening in our surroundings. So everyone's at the bank, everyone's been waiting, everyone's feeling nasty, and that's exactly the time when you can go inside and let that light shine on all of those people. So that's mudita, that's feeling that light and letting it shine on everyone. And then we've got this next one, upekshanam. If you look that up in the Sanskrit dictionary, it's going to say indifference. So indifference doesn't sound like a very good quality. It almost sounds like those people who don't care. But what it really means here is neutrality and even equanimity. So it's neutrality in relation to pleasure and pain, good and evil. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to prove everything. Like we see some of these protesters, and might be something that, you know, whatever they're protesting is something we see is not really right, or a position they support. But in this case, it's not that I'm going to say everything's okay. It's I can see what is dharma, what's correct, and what is adharma, what's not dharma, what's incorrect. But there's no reason for me to take it personally. Since all of those things are happening in the realm of prakriti, all of those demonstrators on one side or another, all of those positions, whatever they are, they're all made of 5 elements. They all exist in this realm of prakriti. My true self is Purusha. It's completely beyond prakriti. I've taken prakriti and I put all of those things on the shelf. So in this case, if my true being is Purusha and something in prakriti is disturbing me, that just means that I need to meditate more. I need to reflect more. I need to ask more carefully and more clearly, who am I? So what it's saying is that not that we shouldn't say what's dharma and what's not dharma, but that we don't need to suffer personally. We don't need to take not even my own suffering. So even the suffering that happens in my own mind, I should not even take that personally. Because that suffering that's happening in my mind is part of prakriti. My true self is Purusha. And so even as I experience suffering in my own mind, I should have neutrality, equanimity in relation to what is happening in my own mind. And then what's that going to give me? So when I have that loving kindness, the compassion, the intrinsic joy, the neutrality, the pleasure, neutrality in relation to pleasure and pain, to merit and demerit, then what I'm going to cultivate is chitta prasadanam. So chitta is the mind, and prasadanam is a beautiful word. It means clarity, it means serenity, it means ease, it means authenticity. So this prasadanam is also that prasad, whatever we receive from Ishvara, I receive all of that as my learning. So it's the same prasad we receive at a Hindu ceremony. So I receive all of life that way. Basically, prasadanam is saying everything is either a learning or a blessing. I'll take the blessings, but I'm not even going to take them too seriously, because they too belong to Prakriti. And the learnings are going to involve some emotional pain for me, and I'm going to have neutrality even in relation to my own emotional pain. Make sense? Okay, good. Let's go on. Kalani, que horas são? 12:30. Okay, good. We're doing great. So Patanjali is giving us all of these different helps to help us go into samadhi. And this is the next one. He says that you can, let's go through the individual words. Prachardana, prachardana, vidaranabhyam, vidaranabhyam, va, pranasya, pranasya, and then all together. Pracharna vidaranabhyam va pranasya, pracharna vidaranabhyam va pranasya. Or the impediments to samadhi are overcome by exhalation and control of breath. It's important to see the Yoga Sutras as a whole, because it could look like he's recommending some kind of pranayama technique here. In exhalation and control of breath, it looks like some kind of kumbhaka. But in fact, he deals with those later in chapter 2. And then if we look at this word closely, vidarana, it literally means intense concentration. So in this case, what he's talking about, in order to use it as a meditation technique, in this particular case, he's not talking about pranayama, which are all dealt with completely there in chapter 2, but he's talking about intense concentration on the different phases of the breath. And he uses a lot of shorthand. So when we get to chapter 3, we're going to see that he only mentions 2 of the pranavayus, only mentions 2 of the elements, only mentions 2 of the chakras. It doesn't mean that that he just hadn't read a book on chakras and didn't know there were 7. He uses a lot of shorthand just to make these things go more quickly. So when he's talking about exhalation here, he's not talking about holding the breath in. He's really talking about developing this vidarana, this intense concentration on each of the phases of breathing as a way of overcoming these impediments and their symptoms, so that we can practice samadhi more smoothly. So let's just do this for a couple of minutes. And not so different from a lot of meditation techniques, we're going to bring a little twist into it. So closing the eyes. And it's just becoming aware of those 4 phases of the breathing. The inhalation, obviously through the nose. The pause. The exhalation. And the pause. And so what he's saying is intense concentration. So how intensely can you concentrate on those 4 phases? And as we come into samadhi later, we'll see that whatever our object is, 2 things are going to happen. First, there's intense concentration. And second, there's a merging called Samapatti. So allow that merging to happen. so that there's nothing but those four phases of breath, and there's no longer a breather. Just let yourself merge with that process. How intensely can you concentrate so that there's no longer a meditator, a process of meditation, or an object of meditation? And then just relax and notice the chitta prasadanam, the clarity, the lightness, the ease, the centering, the peace. So very simple technique, but we're starting to apply the tools of samadhi. Number one, our second sutra, the definition of yoga will be met. There will be no other thoughts, no other vrittis, just the breath. Intense concentration. And then, as we'll see, there's also going to be a merging, Samapatti. And when that merging occurs, there's no longer a meditator, a process of meditation, and an object of meditation. So as we come into samadhi, we can start to look at some basic rules. Number one, Sutra 1.2 has to be there. No other vrittis, no other thoughts. So, and then that difference, those three parts, the meditator, the process of meditation, and the object of meditation, those have been released. So the object of meditation, in this case, the breath, he says, stands out on its own as if it's the only thing that exists. Your object of meditation stands out on its own as if it's the only thing that exists. And that happens through this process of Samapatti. Samapatti means a merging or coalescence. These yoga texts use this word coalescence. I think it's a fancy word for merging, but it sounds kind of nice. Coalescence. So, but that coalescence occurs so that there's no longer a breather, there's no longer a process of breathing, the breath is no longer our object. So that's the point where we begin to enter into samadhi. Okay, so now he gets to the end of these. He's offered some other ones as well. And so then he says, or just do whatever you want. Anything's fine. Just do whatever you want. Who cares? Like he said, I'm indifferent. So if Patanjali's indifferent, he's not going to care what you do. So obviously, not exactly what he means. Let's have a look at it. Yatta, yatta, abhimata, abhimata, dhyanat, dhyanat, va, va, yatta bhimata dhyanadva, yatta bhimata dhyanadva, yatta bhimata dhyanadva. Or the mind becomes steady by meditating whichever way is desired. So that literally means abhimata, literally desired, favorable, agreeable, literally means whatever can go into your mind and stay there. Abhimata, whatever can go into your mind and stay there. Abhimata. So, so is it just doing what is seems best to us? That's what it means, but based on everything that's happened before. So your meditation, it can be whatever you want, but it has to meet the requirements, the characteristics of everything that he's talked about in the chapter so far. So fine to do whatever kind of meditation you want, as long as you haven't forgotten that you just read and studied the whole of chapter 1. So all of these things need to be included in the way that you're going to meditate. Obviously, it needs to still the movements of the mind. Yoga chitta varti nirodha. Yoga chitta varti nirodha. Yoga chitta varti nirodha. So if you were just doing that breathing exercise and it really did still all the other movements of your mind, except for that process of breathing, then that works. So whatever you choose, it's obviously going to have to fit into the definition of yoga. It's going to have to fit into all of these definitions that he's offered so far. So Sutra 1.3 states that when the Vritaya have come into stillness, we abide in our Svarupa. So that is beyond all concepts. So obviously, our meditation, whatever it is, should give us that sense of our authentic true being, beyond all characteristics, beyond qualities, beyond definitions, that knowing where I simply know, this is my true self, this is my soul, this is who I am. So already we're seeing that you can meditate however you want, but there's quite a lot to it. And then abhyasa vairagyam. And so in Sutra 112 states that the stilling the mind occurs through practice and dispassion. So in our own technique, do we have that practice, that regular practice? Is our technique helping us to cultivate non-attachment, dispassion? And it even needs to cultivate dispassion to our technique, because we can become very attached to our technique. And so we ask ourselves, well, is it stilling the movements of the mind? Is it giving me a glimpse of our true being? Am I practicing regularly? Am I practicing, is my practice cultivating non-attachment even to the practice? And then, am I experiencing samadhi? So Sutras 1.17 and 1.18 present the stages of the practice of samadhi. We're going to go through those stages again, but those stages are being presented by Patanjali as a map of the mind. And what he's saying is, here's a map, here's a road map. If you want to go from city A to city B, this is a way to do it, and you're going to pass these places on the way. So whatever our technique might be, even if we're not using specifically those steps of samadhi from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Patanjali is saying that in some way we are going to make a movement from gross, from material to subtle, and eventually even the subtle is going to be left behind, and I'm going to be in a place of pure consciousness. And then, do we have these qualities? Whatever we're practicing, are these qualities part of our practice? Do we have absolute faith in our practice? Does our practice give us energy, and do we have the energy to practice? Are we mindful? Does our practice cultivate mindfulness in all moments? Is our practice steady and stable? That's the meaning of meditation here. And finally, is our practice giving us wisdom? And that wisdom is a wisdom beyond the mind. It's a knowing of who I am. It's a knowing that this is my life's purpose. This is clear. Now I know who I am. I know why I've come here. I know what this universe is all about. I know who its creator is. I've met that creator, and I've experienced that creator within my own being. So that would be wisdom from within the perspective of the Yoga Sutras. And then, does my practice cultivate chitta prasadanam, that ease, that tranquility, that peace? It's what's needed to be unalive, I can tell you. It takes several weeks to start to cultivate it, but eventually we start to get there. And then Ishvara Pranidhana is my practice cultivating surrender to the Lord. So that might certainly be to a devotional deity, but surrender to the Lord is more this all-encompassing knowing that the Creator and the creation are one. It's something we feel in our bones, in our heart, something that we walk with in daily life. So even though he's saying practice in whichever way you want, it's practicing in whichever way you want that meets all of these other qualities and characteristics that he's already introduced up to this point. So, and then what's the quickest shortcut? Well, the quickest shortcut, of course, is that Ishvara Pranidhana. It's surrendering to this greater self, which we all are, to this greater creation, which we all are. And then, of course, we're going to get into our 7 levels of samadhi. Maybe for our next course, we'll find a way to take questions. I miss taking questions. Probably there's a way on this, probably there's a way to use this Zoom to have people raise their hand and then turn on their mics and ask questions. Is that possible? Would anyone like to ask a question? Is that gonna work, Kalani? Let's see if any, who would like to ask a question? Let's try one person. But I don't know if everyone raises their hand at once. Someone try turning on your mic and ask a question. Okay, go ahead. Tell us your name. Okay, I'm not hearing anything yet. I think we've got you all. Have you muted everyone? Você pode tirar ou mute? He's saying that you're not muted. But it just goes to show how limited our technology is at this point. Maybe I'm muted here. Am I muted here?
No, I don't.
Well, anyway, by the time we do our chapter 2, I promise to have our questions working. Try it now. Go ahead, see if someone can ask a question. Make sure you're not muted.
No.
No. Okay, we're going to leave that. We're going to leave that for the advanced course. Chapter 2 will make sure people can ask. So we got a couple of kitties. Nice. So we're going to go into now our practice of the 7 levels of samadhi, because this whole chapter is called Samadhi Pada. And from my understanding within the Yoga Sutras, that it's through these levels of samadhi, it's coming to that place where we can recognize a true self beyond the mind, beyond characteristics, beyond judgments, beyond qualities, even spiritual qualities. That from Patanjali's perspective, that's what's really going to take us ahead. That's what's really going to move us forward. So we're going to go through this 7 levels of samadhi. And of course, there's an 8th level of samadhi that we're going to get to later as we move through the chapters here. But that Dharma Mega Samadhi isn't something we really do. It's more something that happens. So the first one, we see here two names here. We see a Savitarka Samapatti and a Nirvitarka Samapatti. So Samapatti, it means that process of merging. And it's something I think we've all experienced up to a certain point in our meditations. And so even in that one where we are following the breathing, the idea is to go beyond that point where there's a breather, a process of breathing, and an object of breathing. So these 2 kinds of samapatti, they're going to form one level of samadhi. So that's called vitarka samadhi. And that means where we still have a cognitive object. We have a physical object. But in these 2 kinds of samapatti, my relationship to them changes. Because in the first one, it still has a name. I'm still looking at it. I'm starting to merge with it, but it's very much an object for me. There's a sun. The sun is bright. It's 93 million miles from the earth. I know it has solar flares. Probably if you watch as many nature specials as I do, you know a lot about the sun. And so, all of those things at this first level, all of that name and form are going to be there. Now, at this first vitarka level, we're talking about a physical object. Does it matter whether I'm looking at a sun, a poster of the sun on my wall, or I'm visualizing a sun in my solar plexus? Within the Yoga Sutras, whether it's a visualization or whether it's a physical object, those are both considered to be gross objects. So, shtula, or gross. So whether I'm visualizing a physical sun or whether I'm looking at the sun, it's still a physical object. So those are considered physical objects. My relationship to it changes as I start to merge with that object. And this word samapatti, is an important concept because it means that coalescence. And the samadhi can only happen, these levels of samadhi can only happen to the extent that this coalescence also happens. So how am I going to make myself merge? Merge, come on, merge. How am I going to make myself merge? From Patanjali's perspective, that merging is going to happen naturally because that is your nature. You are Purusha. Purusha, you can say Purusha is this light. Purusha in a certain way infuses Prakriti. It infuses our higher mind, Buddhi. That light directs us, guides us on our journey. But ultimately, I am Purusha, and I'm going to move toward that light naturally. If I simply allow myself to merge, that merging, that coalescence will happen because Purusha is my true being. So at this Savitarki Samapatti level, I'm starting to become one with my son, keeping in mind that in all of these levels of samadhi, yogas, chitta, vritti, nirodha, that's taken for granted. That I'm only going to be looking at that one thing. I'm not going to be meditating on the sun and thinking about sunbathing. So it's already a pretty good level of meditation. It means that my mind's not wandering. So even our most basic level of samadhi is already a pretty good level of samadhi because the mind's not wandering anymore. So at this first level, let's just say that I have an image of my sun. The sun, I'm visualizing a sun in my solar plexus. Probably would want to use a mudra. Mudras are going to be very helpful. So we're going to be using some mudras when we get to our meditation because they are going to help to keep all of those other vrittis, out of our meditation. So the mudras are very helpful here for entering samadhi. So then I get to nirvitarka samadhi. Sa means that with rational thought. So the vitarka is the rational thought, and sa means with. So at that sa vitarka level, samapatti, I still have that rational thought. And then I get to the nirvitarka level. That means that coalescence, that merging with my object is starting to happen. So how is it that I'm not going to see it as a sun anymore? Because I'm now at an intuitive transcendental level. I'm feeling the sun. I've become one with the sun. And the mind is actually starting to disappear. So there's really no one there to say it's a sun. It's 93 million miles away. So that person is merging with the object. And so we no longer have a conscious reflection because through that process of merging. So there's no longer name and form. Starting to become clear? Okay. I know it takes some time. So, and then those first two levels, those two are the vitarka samadhi level. And so then we come to the vichara. And so vichara is a subtle object. So obviously, if our gross object is a sun, our subtle object could be luminescence. And so one thing that's going to be really important to see here is that this is not a visualization of light. So it's actually an experience of light. If it were a visualization of light, there would be a meditator. There would be a process of meditation. There would be an object of meditation, which would be a light, and I would be meditating on that light. But this is an intuitive, a deep intuitive experience of light. At this level of savichara samapatti, I still know that it's a light. I have a recognition of it as luminosity. It may have a name like luminosity. And so there's still some kind of, it's subtle, but there's still some kind of cognitive knowing of what that is. And then when I get to the nirvichara samapatti, that cognition is gone. And in a certain way, I've become that light. So the rest of this chapter 1, he's going to be talking about those qualities of what it's like to experience that nirvichara samapatti. And one of the beautiful images that's used in relation to it is this autumnal brilliance. So related to the season of autumn, and just that sense of almost being in autumn sunlight and everything just becomes golden. And at a certain moment, you become that golden light and everything else has disappeared. So in this nirvichara samapatti, there's this sense of autumnal brilliance and we become that brilliance. So we've gone, first we had a gross object, which was the sun, and then a subtle object, which was luminescence. There was initially, there was a cognitive awareness of it. It still had a name or form. Hey, great. I made it to this third level. Hey, I'm in savichara samapatti. I'm seeing that luminescence. And so then at this fourth level, this is where in a certain way, samadhi per se begins, because I've completely become my object. That meditator, process of meditation, and object of meditation have really disappeared at that point. Okay, and then those two levels of samapatti together, they form that vichara samadhi. We're getting there now. Now we're really making progress. And we're going to go through this, and then, of course, we're going to practice it. So then we go to this fifth level, Ananda Samadhi. So this is where that luminescence has just become a field of bliss. And again, of course, it can't be a visualization, because if it were a visualization, there would be a meditator, there would be a process of meditating on bliss, and there would be an object of meditation, which would be the bliss. But this is not that. This is where everything has just dissolved into a field of bliss. Very important here is that at that bliss level, we're still 2 or 3 levels away from the ultimate samadhi, because later on we're going to come to Dharma Mega Samadhi. So we're still at level 5. If there are 8 levels altogether, and I'm a field of bliss, so this is Patanjali laying out that roadmap, that if we are experiencing bliss regularly in our meditations, Patanjali is saying that's great, because that is part of the roadmap. If you're going from city A to city B, that experience of bliss is a city you are going to encounter on the way, but it's not the end of your journey. And so then you're going to go to Asmita Samadhi. So this is a sense of absolute clarity and absolute knowing. Who is that bliss? And it's not a cognitive knowing. It's a post-cognitive knowing. It's a transcendent knowing of that bliss. Who is that bliss? And we can say it's the soul. It's the true self. And then, but at this 6th level, there's still a sense, a very subtle sense of individuality, that I am that soul. I am that one who is the essence of that bliss. There's still an I there. That is the essence of that bliss. And then we're still going on. And then we go to Asamprajnata Samadhi. And this is, so that last stage of I am that bliss, I am the soul, that true self is already present in the 6th level. But there's still an I within Prakriti who has a knowing of that self. So we're still within Prakriti because there's still a knowing of that self. And then we come to Asamprajnata Samadhi, also called Nirbija Samadhi. I'll talk about the difference between them in a moment. So Asamprajnata, it means beyond wisdom. And so Samprajnata means with wisdom. And so it means that I'm still within the realm of Prakriti. I'm as wise as I can get within the realm of Prakriti. And then at a certain point, I'm going to transcend that, so that there's no longer any sense of a meditator at all. There are only qualities. And I'll talk a little bit about those qualities. So we can't really talk about qualities, because if there's no one there to experience them, how can you have qualities? But they're as close as we can come within the realm of Prakriti. But let's just talk really briefly about these 2 words. Asamprajnata, we mentioned, it means that I'm beyond wisdom. Which means I have transcended, as wise as I can become within the realm of Prakriti, and now I'm going to go beyond it. And then the other word for that, Nirbija, it means without a seed. There's no seed left. And that word seed is very important, because if you think about the Hindu cosmology, how we go through all of these phases, and then the whole world comes back into just a seed. And from that seed, it's born again. All of creation is born again. So everything merges into pralaya, and then from that single seed, everything is born again. So in this case, that seed of creation, of being a limited personality, of being your limited personality with identification, and having that personality be your life's meaning. It's not that your personality is going to end, but having that personality as your life meaning, that's the seed. And then in Nirbija Samadhi, you've removed that seed. You've seen your true being. And once that seed is removed completely, of course, that will be Kaivalya, which is going to be discussed in later chapters. But very interesting that Kaivalya, the word Patanjali uses for Kaivalya for illumination, coming from Kevala, Kevala, meaning alone. So you're completely alone. Who wants to be alone? I don't want to be alone. All of this yoga just to be alone. I thought it was to make friends. I thought it was to have yoga students. Who wants to be alone? So what it's referring to is that you are yourself, completely independent, no longer codependent on Prakriti. No longer codependent on Prakriti. So you have your personality, you have your life, you have all of those things, but it goes back to what we just talked about, that upekshanam, that neutrality, because you've recognized clearly that you are Purusha and that you are not Prakriti. In that way, you have finally removed that seed, that bija, that seed of a limited personality that will be your life's purpose and meaning. You've removed that seed. So Nirbija Samadhi, Asamprajnataha Samadhi, those two meaning basically the same thing, but referring to two different aspects. One is that you've transcended wisdom. The other is that you remove that seed of becoming a personality. Clear enough? Ready to practice? Everyone ready to go into Samadhi? Okay. Kalani, que horas são?
3:08.
Hã?
3:08.
3:08 já? 3:08 já? Okay. Well, we'll go over a few minutes. Okay. So we're going to start by placing our hands in Abhisheka Mudra. We're going to bring the hands into fists. We're going to place the fists together. And then we're going to extend our little fingers. Little fingers are touching. Okay. And we're going to hold them in front of the solar plexus. And so we're visualizing a sun. It has name, it has form, it has qualities. And to be considered samadhi, the only thing that at this most basic level of samadhi, the only thing you can't do is think about going to the beach. And let those thoughts enter too. It's not that we're going to block thoughts, but just that we're going to focus so completely on that sun. Even at this stage, although the sun has name and form, that distinction between meditator, process of meditation, and object of meditation are already going to start to diminish. So it's not that you have to avoid thinking about sunbathing, it's that that sun is the only thing that exists. So take a few breaths to focus on that sun in the solar plexus. And the next change is so easy, you probably don't even have to open your eyes. You just interlace the fingers to the outside and extend the middle fingers in Matangi Mudra. You just interlace the fingers to the outside and extended the middle fingers. And you hold those in front of the solar plexus. So you still have that image of the sun, but now allow that merging to happen so that its name and form begin to disappear because your concentration is so complete. And also that separation between meditator, process of meditation, and object of meditation are beginning to be released. So that sun begins to shine forth alone as the only thing that exists. And just allowing that merging to happen. And now the next gesture is very easy. Don't even need to open your eyes. Just press the ring finger down, each ring finger down with the thumb over the ring finger bent down, Surya Mudra. And now you don't need to do anything. That sun will just naturally become a field of luminescence. And there's still a cognitive knowing here. But that luminescence is shining forth as the only thing that exists. And now you probably need to look at this one. You bring the thumbs together. You touch the index fingers together. They don't touch the thumbs. The rest of the fingers are separated. And now allow yourself to completely merge with that luminescence. The sense that that luminescence is the only thing that exists. Become one with that luminescence. So now that there is only luminescence, the mind begins to dissolve. And that cognitive naming, analyzing also dissolves. And let that happen. Let yourself merge so deeply with that luminescence that nothing else exists. Now you're going to touch the thumb to all the fingers and extend the little finger. The thumb touches the three fingers, not the little finger is extended. And then within that field of luminosity, sense its nature as bliss. And let that bliss fill your entire being. Allow yourself to become a field of ecstasy. And merge with that ecstasy. Notice if there's still a tendency for there to be a meditator on that ecstasy, a process of meditation, and then the ecstasy as an object and simply allow that merging to occur. So there's nothing but that field of luminescence, which is also ecstasy. Ananda Samadhi. And just release into that ecstasy. And then bringing the hands into Jnana Mudra. All of you know Jnana Mudra, touching tip of the thumb, tip of the index finger to the tip of the thumb, extending the other 3 fingers. And within that field of luminosity and bliss, there is a sense of I amness, a sense of knowing, a sense of authentic being. And just soften into that knowing. You could call it the truest, deepest part of yourself or your soul. A sense of I amness, asmita samadhi. And then just turn the palms down into Chin Mudra and simply let go. Almost as if you're holding on to the edge of a pool and you'll just let go. Or a drop of water releasing into the ocean. Simply becoming one with all things in a field of pure conscious being. Nirbija Samadhi. And we'll return the same way we came in, turning the hands up. Breathing into that sense of I amness. And then touching the thumb to all the fingers except the little finger. Experiencing your entire being as a field of blissful luminosity. Bringing the hands into Tejas Mudra, the thumbs touch, the index fingers touch, the rest of the fingers are spread wide. Completely united with this field of luminosity. Then holding the ring finger down in Surya Mudra, that same field of luminosity, but now with a cognitive knowing, a cognitive understanding. Yes, I'm here in this field of luminosity. And then Matangi Mudra, all of the fingers interlaced, the middle fingers stretching forward in front of the solar plexus. We're back to our image of the sun, but completely merged with it. And then finally, coming back into Abhisheka Mudra, fists together, index fingers forward, and back to our physical image of the sun, completely focused. And then allowing that light, allowing that luminosity to be integrated into all of our interactions and activities, so that this whole life, our life and those of others, may be lived with greater clarity, with greater peace, with greater ease. And for this, we have this tool of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and the practice of Samadhi. Let's complete by chanting Om. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Very nice to be with you all. That practice is in your handout. And of course, you have this practice also on YouTube, so you can practice it more. And we look forward to seeing you all in chapter 2. Definitely start in the next couple of months. Very nice to see you all. Thank you for being here with us. Bye for now. See you next time.